Wonderful history, 1972 Targa Florio, fourth outright, won the 2 litre class.
Well, welcome again to another video from Historic and Vintage Restorations, and in this one Paul takes us on a tour of all the British cars he has in for work, so sit back, down tools and watch.
So behind me is an E-type Series 2. The owner just fell in love with the car, despite the fact that it had a small fire in it, and then he decided after that to restore the car, which we're doing currently. So it's waiting to go to the paint shop.
And that's an Australian delivered?
The Australian delivered car, yes, so full Australian history.
Right.
So again, that's sort of special.
So what year is that one?
That is 1970, I think it is, 70, 71.
Year of my birth.
Oh, there you are, same age, look at that. Yeah. You're in better nick though.
Well, questionable.
Questionable.
Okay, next up.
Oh, next up, well behind us, we've got a bit of British green here, a Healey Silverstone. Now, these cars were made in the late 40s, early 50s by Healey. Prior to Healey going into making Austin Healeys, he made a series of cars under his own name, and powered by a Riley engine, motor and gearbox, 2.5 litre Riley engine and gearbox. And about 100 of these cars were made. So they're rare and unique in that they're eligible for any historic event in Europe. And that makes them very attractive people to own. This car raced at Silverstone when it was new. So it's got all that
So
history.
what year was that?
Would have been, I think it was 1951 when it raced first.
Beautiful, wonderful. Lovely homage to where it raced.
Yes. Another British car, but it's red, which is unusual. Here we go. And that's because it spent most of its life in Italy. This is a Lola T290, 1972, powered by a Chevy Cosworth engine, about 270 horsepower, about 500 kilos. So fantastic power to weight ratio. Wonderful history, 1972 Targa Florio, fourth outright, won the 2 litre class. They're a very special car. They made about 30 of these, and they're well sought after now for historic racing. When you actually take the fiberglass off, it's an aluminium riveted tub. They also fitted at that time the Cosworth 3 litre V8 in them, Formula 1 engine. So that would have been something to drive.
This sort of shape, many would, or maybe people might mistake as a Can-Am car.
Oh no, Can-Am cars, well, similar. It's that same sort of period. There are a lot of cars. A lot of people have said that this, to their minds, was the nicest period for this type of sports car because they were very clean. They were all fairly similar in that they're supposedly 2-seaters. Similar shape, not a lot of wing, and not a lot of the downforce, but certainly they certainly had the performance.
And that's going to be seen out on the track?
Oh, well, it's interesting. It hasn't been out on the track in Australia, even though it's been here for a while. We got it recommissioned it for the owner recently, and he took it down to Phillip Island and had a bit of fun and enjoyed himself in it. So let's see what happens. I don't know. There's not a lot really of racing in Australia for these cars. In Europe, there's an enormous amount of racing. A lot of fun.
I bet. And a great
lot of
sound,
fun.
I imagine, when
Oh,
that's
the
on the dyno.
sounds amazing, yeah. It makes its maximum horsepower. It's interesting, you look at the tacho, and it's got a red line at 6,000 revs. And that means don't go under 6,000 revs because there's nothing home. There's nothing at home. So it revs to between 6 and 9,000. Yeah, it makes a terrific sound
Great stuff. Okay.
for a 4-cylinder. It's good fun.
Yeah.
And this is a Riley Kestral, late 30s, 1.5 litre engine with a pre-selected gearbox, which is unique to a lot of British cars in the 30s. Really, the gearbox was the forerunner of the electric gearboxes that we've got on our steering wheels. These people were lucky to have something similar, but it was all mechanical in those days. So they're very unusual, again, unique cars to drive with that gearbox. Don't know whether you've ever driven one.
No, not at all.
No.
No.
Essentially, what it is it's an epic cycle gear train with 4 speeds in reverse, and each gear has its own clutch in it, and you don't have a clutch as we know as such. You have a change lever. So when you're stationary, you select first gear, and then you put your foot onto the change lever, and you lift it. When you lift the change lever up, you can select first gear. Then you can move your lever to second gear. You just punch the change in, it goes to second. And the only trick is, once you're up to third or fourth, you've got to remember what gear you're in, because it's easy enough. You can pre-select the next gear. So you can be going along in fourth and have third pre-selected, for instance, when you're coming to a hill or a corner, and then you just punch it and it'll drop down into that gear. And they were very favoured by a lot of the pre-war racing cars, because they could actually, in those days, they had non-synchronous gearboxes, so they were working hard to match the gears to change down, which meant that they couldn't often concentrate on their braking, whereas this, they could concentrate on their braking because they'd already pre-selected the gear that they were going to change down, and they only had to punch the change lever, and they'd be able to change gears and away they go. And they were a really modern little motor. It's twin cam hemispherical combustion chambers, and a very strong performer in their day.
The market for pre-war, is there a dip in it now? You know,
Look, it's interesting. Yeah, I think there probably has been. There's definitely what's happening here is there's a generational gap. As a lot of these owners have got older, they've hung on to them, and we're seeing now a lot of cars coming onto the market that people have owned for a long time. And the younger generation, which I call the ones that have got any money, are in their 30s and 40s, and they have a lot of trouble going past, 60s Porsches is about as far as they can see. I know that from my kids. So this is a 4.5 litre Bentley, short chassis, Le Mans style tourer, been in long-term ownership of a family ownership, and we've been currently refurbishing the car. Front axle's been rebuilt. We've just finished rebuilding the gearbox and the back end, and we're waiting for the engine, which is being rebuilt at the moment. So the family used this car and used it well. It's driven all around Australia. They've taken it to Europe. It's been a wonderful car. But Bentleys, I guess, from my youth, they were the epitome of a vintage sports car. This was the car.
Absolutely.
And they're wonderfully robust, bit truck-like in a lot of ways, but you get them out on the open road and they're wonderful cars to drive, and very fast.
Sure.
For what era they were.
Tell me the relationship between, obviously people would think of this era and the Bentley name and sort of think of a blower.
Yeah.
Tell me what's the difference between this and blower?
Well, the difference between this and the blower is the blower, basically. The 4.5 litre engine in the blowers. And again, look, there was one in Australia, so people are not very familiar with them, but I suggest they had probably different internals to take the extra power. But yeah, with a big supercharger mounted up the front, they were capable of, producing more than 200 horsepower. So it made one of these things go pretty well. I mean, a normal 4.5 litre is probably about 160, and they go along very nicely with that.
And what's the engine? Where is that currently?
I was with our engine builder, and that's been completely refurbished, all new components. It's actually a very good car.
Yeah.
Not to be tarted up because it's going to be used. It's the car he will use, on rallies, and they're very, very usable cars from that point of view, because at least you can keep up with the modern traffic. Whereas a lot of vintage cars struggle, one of the smaller engine cars. And these cars are well sought after. They've got a fantastic following, they change hands normally privately because of the value. People don't talk about it, but they seem to change hands. No one wants to put their hand up and say, "Oh, I just spent $2 million." There's probably two sorts of owners in my mind. There's the ones that drive them and enjoy them and use them, and there's the other ones that see them more as an investment. And clear as day. Sometimes you get a bit of a crossover, but very rarely. And the ones that use them and drive them, they get so much pleasure out of the cars.
Okay, Paul, thank you so much for having me here today and giving us a little tour around. It's been very informative, and we'd love to come back and check out some more.
Yeah, David, thanks. No, look, you're more than welcome. It changes all the time here from week to week, day to day, and you can see the progress and not progress, whatever the case may be.
All right, mate. Thank you very much.
Great,
Cheers.
thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks.